Okay, welcome everybody. I'm just thinking what's the view. I'm not a big Zoom guy, but let me see, what's the view here? Gallery view. All right, that's kind of weird. Let me try the other view. Speaker view. Do I get to look at you, Gannett, on speaker view? Is that okay? I think that'll work. All right, just a quick introduction on myself. My macrobiotic journey started in 1970, hitchhiking across the United States with a friend. We both had really long hair, traveling, doing illegal things, ingesting illegal substances. And then we just became vegetarian on a whim and got out to the West Coast and came across the book Zen Macrobiotics. We returned late that summer back to the East Coast, met a few people who had been working at Erewhon, the business founded by the Kushis. And then we built a store in Connecticut with those two guys, Peter Bradford from London, who later went on to found Sunwheel Foods in London. And the four of us operated the store in Connecticut. And then I went to Boston about a year later and got very involved with the macrobiotic community, mostly in the food business. Went to lectures by Michio, got a chance to live with the Kushis on a couple of occasions. Was very inspired, of course, by Michio, as everyone was at that time and still is, I hope. And went to Japan just to see where this all came from. And ended up spending close to 10 years there on two separate visits. Met my wife, Mutsuko, there. We've been married coming on 48 years, 5 children. Unfortunately, one passed away about a year and a half ago. Daniel, due to some complications going back to his birth when he was born, that kind of followed him throughout life. And I won't go into it much more than that. Those complications eventually shortened his life. Anyway, so we've got currently 4 children. I have one daughter from an early high school area relationship. I've also had the privilege to be involved with what's under the moniker transformational work. I got to work in the early 1970s with the Werner Erhard's organization, that time called AST, later became the Forum. I wasn't particularly moved by my initial meeting with them, but later on in Japan, I had the opportunity to work with a Japanese woman who was bringing that body of work to Japan. And that just blew my life wide open. Whatever Greg Johnson was until then died on the spot, and something else took over, which is a whole nother story. Around the turn of going into the 21st century, I came across the work of Carlos Castaneda. And for the last 25 years, I've been involved with that work alongside everything else. I'm the director of a charity in London called the Community Health Foundation, which operates under the name of Concord Institute for Integral Studies. It's a macrobiotic organization founded by Bill Tara in the mid-1970s. Kenny Waxman was the second director there. Simon Brown was the director. And then I took over in 1994, and I've been the director ever since. I think I have another year or two to go there. And we've just developed a body of work. I've kind of reframed the macrobiotics. I wasn't comfortable with the paradigm or model we had been using for various reasons, which I won't go into in this call. And we reframed it by bringing in some self-inquiry or transformation work, more ontological inquiry on the nature of being. We combined that with some of the movement work, some of the energy work from the Castaneda, and we built a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach with macrobiotics at the heart of it, but surrounded by self-inquiry and energy management, you could say. So that's a little bit about myself in Concord. The working title for this little chat session, Jeanette didn't give me a whole lot of guidelines on what to do here, so I'm just kind of making it up as I go along here. The working title, which I gave to her last night, was death, colon, our lifelong partner. So on the premise that the moment we're born, we suddenly have a companion called death. It's our lifelong companion. The sooner moment we're born, we have that possibility. We're born as this biological being. That biological being is a finite being, and it knows it's going to die one day. So we have the death as our companion, but in our culture, in our Western culture, we tend to assign death to the end of our life, like death's there waiting for us, rather than appropriating our death like right now, having an immediate and direct relationship with our death right now, and whatever that implies or means or infers. And we can have a relationship with our death, an immediate, direct relationship. It no longer has to live in the basement of our house, locked away behind multiple doors. We can bring it up from the basement and we can live with it. And as the seers of ancient Mexico say, it hangs around over our left shoulder. Death does. It hangs around our left shoulder and it will never lie to us. So you can ask it any question you want, according to the seers, and it will never lie to you. It will always talk to you straight. So, so death as our lifelong companion, like to be the working title for this. And the intention here is for all of us to have a more direct and immediate relationship with that phenomena, call it the unknown. The seers of ancient Mexico called it Nawal, the unknown, the realms over the horizon, what we don't know and what we really don't know, we don't know. And so having a relationship with that, whatever that is what I hope we can come out of here with. So we're not here just waiting for our death to come upon us at some late stage when we start falling apart, but we can have it right here, right now, a taste of infinity, if you will, which is part of our birthright. In the seers world, they have something called the energy body, which is the counterpart to our physical body. So according to their way of seeing life, we have a physical body with an energy field, but we also have an energy body with its own energy field. And when we're born, we're born together with those. But as we go into life and things happen, we start to develop a personality, an ego, you could say. And the more that develops from a young age all the way up till we become teenage and adult, those two, the energy body and the physical body, start to separate and become alienated from each other and become two separate beings, and they become completely eclipsed, and we lost complete relationship with the so-called energy body or spirit, whatever you want to call it, the spirit, some people call it the spirit being, and we've lost touch with that. And we've kind of got locked into this ego self, this individuated character, encased in this kind of skin enclosure, separate from everything else around us, living in a temporality, a time frame. And the art of the seers of ancient Mexico was to be able to shift through various trainings, which includes movements, which includes a complete life review, a lot of methods, was to shift their awareness from this physicalized being, this ego-based way of being in the world, to shift their awareness from that to before they die, to shift it to their energy body. So by the time they've reached their death, they've already shifted their awareness completely into their energy being, and that's the vehicle by which you enter the next world. So that's the framework for the seers of ancient Mexico, which I thought I would share with you because it's integral part of what we're doing in London, alongside our macrobiotic nutritional work, alongside our self-inquiry work, and the ontological inquiry that we're doing. So how to participate here is I would invite you not just listening for information, which is typically how we do, and it's fair, we're wired that way to just listen to information, but we could be here And when we're listening to information, there's usually a me here behind my computer screen and a bunch of yous out there behind your computer screen, apparently, by appearance, separate from each other. But perhaps we could suspend that apparency and that there is no separation between me behind my computer screen and you behind, maybe there's no walls there or any separation. It's the same phenomena. It's a unified phenomena happening all at once. So if we could be on that call, just for a moment, suspending the appearance of separateness and that we're all in this together and that there's some possibility here available to us in these few moments we have together. So that would be the intention I would like to put forth, if you don't mind. So it's not just about information, but about listening for possibility itself. Possibility being a domain, a dimension, a realm that is available to us. Let's call it that. So our common understanding is death is sometime waiting for us in life. And I was going to, Gennat and I were talking about some sort of online forum we could do on macrobiotics and longevity. Because one of the interpretations of macrobiotics has to do with longevity or extending life. The macro apparently was supposed to mean, among other things, a long life or a big life. But sometimes people thought it's a long life. Now that becomes problematic in a way. If we see macrobiotics as long life, it does become problematic in a way because long life implies that we're trying to survive, you could say, in a way. We're using the tools of macrobiotics to extend life, to survive longer. But my experience is that when we're dancing with survival, in a way, we're inviting the fear of, it becomes self-fulfilling in a way. That which we're trying to survive is even that much more empowered. So I really want to include in this chat here, we've had some recent passings of macrobiotic friends, which I won't not necessarily go into names and so forth. I'm sure when Gennat was thinking about this particular forum, it had that partially in mind. How can we make peace with this phenomena? How can we know more about this phenomena? So I wanted to distinguish between how we look at death as something that awaits us at the end of our biological time, and how other cultures, such as the shamans of ancient Mexico, but also the Japanese as well. We have in our living room upstairs, we have a Butsudan, a Buddhist altar. And on that Buddhist altar, there are photos of my wife's parents. There's a photo of my son, of course, who passed away. There's his ashes there. There are flowers, there's incense, there's a gong, you could say. And every day my wife prays in front of that altar to her ancestors. So in present time, she's having a communication by a prayer to her ancestors. So death is there in the moment. And so we're including that over the horizon energy spirits in our present moment. So death was more part of life in certain cultures. We tend to shuffle it away, push it away, rather than embrace it. Perhaps we have an opportunity to embrace our death, to accept it as an ally, you could say, as something to perhaps empower us. So what I brought along was a couple poems I'd like to read, if you don't mind. Is that okay with you all?
Sure.
A couple poems? All right. The first poem is a Rainer Marie Rilke poem, Austrian poet. This is actually, I'm going to dedicate this poem to Denny. It's about hearing the death of this poem is about hearing the death of a friend or a relative, somebody very close to you, hearing the death. And the poem is also about how death makes our self-importance so irrelevant, how we think of how so highly of ourselves and how important we are. This poem is about how death just kind of snickers and laughs at our own self-importance. So I'm gonna read this poem. It's called Unhearing of a Death. You can choose whose death you want. We lack all knowledge of this parting, death. Death does not deal with us. We've no reason to show death any admiration, even love or hate. His mask of feigned magical lament gives us a false impression. The world stage is still filled with roles which we play. While we worry that our performances may not please, death also performs, although to no applause. But as you left us, there broke upon this stage a glimpse of reality, shown through the slight opening through which you disappeared through. Green, evergreen, bathed in sunlight, actual woods. We keep on playing, still anxious, our difficult roles, declaiming, accompanied by matching gestures as required. But your presence, so suddenly removed from our midst and from our play, at times overcomes us like a sense of the other reality, yours, that we are so overwhelmed and play our actual lives instead of the performance, forgetting altogether the applause. Rainer Maria Rilke. And one more poem, Juan Ramon Jimenez, Spanish poet. It's called I Am Not I. I am not I. I am this one walking beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and whom at other times I forget, who remains calm and silent while I talk, and forgives gently when I hate, who walks where I am not, who will remain standing when I die. I'll read it one more time. I am not I. I am this one, walking beside me whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and at other times I forget, who remains calm and silent when I talk, and forgives gently when I hate, who walks where I am not, who will remain standing when I die. Juan Ramon Jimenez.
That's nice.
So these are, these are different cultures expressing their relationship with this phenomena called death. And maybe we can move the phenomena of death from what we think we know into the domain of what we don't know, and maybe even the next domain of what we don't know, like a possibility of being. And we can have that relationship right now. We don't have to keep it in the basement. We can embrace it. Our finiteness, we are going to die. We are mortal beings. Castaneda's teacher, Don Juan drilled it in his head over and over and over again, reminding him, we are beings on our way to death. We are going to die. Because your actions in life will not have their full force until they've till we've concluded that we are beings on our way to death, that we are finite, mortal. And it's embracing that, and it's not embracing it intellectually, it's internalizing that. As we would say graphically, it's like eating the hand grenade. So that's the invitation here, is to eat the hand grenade. To be a little over graphic here, and have a new relationship with death as a possibility of being. So that's my opening statement. You got that all on recording, so people can revisit that.
Yes,
So-
thank you for that wonderful opening presentation on your background. It was fabulous. Would you be able
Carol,
to?
can we see you? Can you?
Oh, yes, okay, yes.
Thanks.
So thank you so much for that introduction, and really appreciate it. Could you speak more in relation to the passing death of some of our beloved counselors, and do we need to alter the macrobiotic diet, or what is your opinion on that? I really appreciate it, and thanking you so much.
And I'd like to
Sure.
open that question to all of us, not just Greg is not a specialist on why people die.
Yes, thank you.
I'm happy to give an answer, or not an answer, but response. Other people have been, there are people on this I can see have been around for a long time as well. I know Denny well. I know and Ed Esco, of course. I go back with them to the early days of Boston. They're very friends of mine. I was in Japan with Denny. We went out, used to go out and get pissed together. That means drunk in British slang. And we were good friends. He got me, he assisted in getting me my first visa in Japan through a friend that was there. So it was really, it was tragic for me. What can I say? And without diminishing the guy, first of all, I have to honor Denny. He lived a life of commitment. He lived out of his commitment. He had a particular cut on macrobiotics, much closer to probably Michio's Order of the Universe. The model that Denny operated out of was very close to Michio's model, modified somewhat for him. I thought that model had some limitations to it in terms of our own well-being and our ability to unfold the possibilities. That's my take on it. But I don't want to use that to diminish this, who he was and who he was for his community, family, and so forth. But on the other side, you want to look, what can we learn from this? If we can learn that maybe it's time to question the fundamental framework and the model that we're using for macrobiotics, and see if there's some limitations or inherent limitations that were not taken into account. So that would be my take on that, and I'm sure other people have their particular view on that. And that goes for Ed as well, Ed Esco. And there's a half a dozen other people I knew over the years through the macrobiotic community who passed away early and unexpectedly, suicide, cancer, of course, Micho, Lily, Aveline, and so forth. So I leave it open to anyone else who wants to comment on the early passing, I guess you would say, unfortunate passing of some of our leaders, teachers, counselors.
Warren Kramer,
Warren
Sheldon.
Kramer, yes.
If I may say, hi, Greg.
Hello, Bill.
I was in Chicago 15 years ago or so, helping a woman who had breast cancer and was in a hospital setting with her after surgery. And I found myself leaving the doctor's dressing room and walking into the emergency room. where two policemen had brought on a gurney a guy who was injured in some automobile accident, apparently, and they were finishing up the paperwork. And I thought to myself, you know, these guys probably see a lot of different kinds of situations which involve sudden deaths or taking people out of their home who are having heart attacks, or people who are having difficulty breathing near the end of their lives, or shocking situations where children were shot or whatever. And so I stopped them and said, hey guys, you know, I told them what I was doing and my work and so forth. And I said, you know, it occurs to me that you guys have seen a lot of end of life. I wonder if you could tell me anything you've learned about it. And they both smiled and laughed and looked at each other. And one guy said to the other, yeah, I think we could say something. And they kind of like looked at each other to realize what it was one was going to say and the other was going to kind of comment. So what the first one said was, you know, a couple of months ago, we were called to an automobile accident on Highway 16 or whatever it was. And this guy had lost control of his car in a snowstorm, and he skidded around and he hit a concrete abutment and he was thrown from his car and he was in the ditch. And when we got there, guy was about 70 years old and he just stood up and he was fine. He was completely fine. But we insisted we take him in, and we took him into this hospital, and they looked at him and they discharged him in a couple hours. And he was just an amazing accident. His car was totaled and he was thrown, but you know, he was all right. And then the one guy looked at the other, and the other one said, yeah, I know. And then he said, you tell it. So the second guy says, yeah, and just last week, we went out to Highland Park over, you know, near here, which is a nicer neighborhood outside of Chicago. He says, there's a guy's about 35, I think he was, 36. He was driving in his Mercedes, and he was coming down a friend's driveway, which was pretty steep, and he skidded off the driveway. Couldn't have been going more than, you know, 5 miles an hour or something. And he went into a tree. The bag exploded. The son of a gun died. He died right away. 35 years old. And then they looked at each other, and then the first one said, I'll tell you what I learned. When your time is up, your time is up. And that was it.
Yeah.
So, you know, as we think about honoring Denny or Ed or Warren or Micho or others, there's a couple other people I think of who remind me more of that, and who take me out of the framework of time being not long enough, or with response to someone's question about should we change the diet, right? What do you do with Chico Veratojo, who was a dear friend who I met on the street in Lisbon when he was 19 years old, before he was macrobiotic, and encouraged him to come into a lecture to hear Micho for the first time. And a year later, he's living in my house. And 20 years later, he's leading a macrobiotic center. And 20 years after that, I find out he never surfaced from a deep dive, scuba diving. He died instantly. When your time is up, your time is up. We don't have to change the diet for Chico, or we didn't have to change the diet for Denny, who probably was more an accurate embrace of the freedom of macrobiotics, not a diet, but of a range or a space of living. I mean, I remember the first time I went to Philadelphia to see Denny, and I got off the train. I came up the escalator at Penn Station, and he was supposed to meet me. I couldn't find him. I walked into the bookstore, you know, gift shop, Denny had his back turned and he was eating an ice cream cone. And I thought, oh my God, like I better not I better like turn away so he doesn't see me seeing him eating an ice cream cone, right? And he turned around just as that happened, and he looked at me and he smiled, and he like shoved the rest of the ice cream cone in his mouth, and I could barely talk, and ice cream dripping down his face. And he said, "Let's go." He never said a thing about ice cream or this is a binge, or he was eating an ice cream cone. You know what else was happening? Nothing. He was eating an ice cream cone. So what? It was like he didn't have to change his diet. He lived an incredible life. He was a dear friend. There'll be a memorial service for him on May 13th. I've been speaking with Susan, his wife, regularly. Spoke to her yesterday. I'll speak at that. And as Greg noted, he lived an incredible life of commitment and fulfilled his intention to help numbers of people, enormous numbers of people. So his time is up. That's all.
I could add something perhaps. First of all, the word macrobiotics for me from the very beginning on, and this is since in the 80s of last century, the macrobiotic, the word that was always for me having everything together, having a big life. That means the cosmos, the universe, and our earthly life, everything is together. I never thought of Uveland's interpretation, a long life, saying years in the calendar, you know. This is for me a big life, macrobiotics. And long life, short life, it is so relative. It is so, what can I say? When people are very devoted and they put all their passion into their work, perhaps they use up their bodies, perhaps they use up their organs a little bit more than the proportion would be for their age. I know from Tibetan teachers that they can be very old. They can also, because they do so much for everybody, they do so much, they serve so much that they also can die very early. I think this calendar age, excuse me my expression, it's not a perfect English word probably, you know what I mean, doesn't say a lot. And so it's the quality, how much do I get involved with what I really can share with others, and that's it. And then when I have done my duty in giving away what I'm supposed to give away, then I can leave, you know, then I come up again. So thank you.
Any comments on the original question about the quote early passing of some of our macrobiotic teachers? Bill's got, you know, when your time's up, your time's up. There may be other interpretations there.
One time, I'll just say one time, Sheldon, before I knew him, he told the story that he had a Volkswagen Beetle. He was driving and hit something, I don't remember what it was, flipped over. I mean, it was one of these terrible stories. And when the whole thing was finished, he crawled out and walked away, and he didn't have a scratch. And he told this story one time, if you know Greg Samples, a macrobiotic friend, and he told this story to Greg, and Greg said, "Oh, you're a really young guy." And he saw it in terms of yin and yang, that Sheldon was so young that he was able just to walk away. And in Bill's story about the two people, the 70-year-old and the 35-year-old or something, maybe we could interpret it that way if you want to. I mean, it's another way possible to look at it.
You know, what we learn, you know, when you really go deep, do a deep inquiry into being, into the nature of reality, there's just what is, and then we make up meaning. We bring an interpretation. We give meaning, and we're just a meaning generating phenomena. But life itself is inherently meaningless itself. It's just there. Now then we come along because we need a story. We need to do something. We create meaning and create a game to play called life, and then we get on. And then we forgot that we made it all up. And so sometimes it's good to remember that, oh, this is all made up. All there is what is, and there's nothing else. And that's a powerful place. If you can get to that place, it's different ground to stand on.
The earlier comment that someone made prior to Ginat's share, I think it was Carol, though, was it Carol who spoke, saying in your language about not worrying about the calendar time or chronological time, that word you were looking for. You began by saying that you always thought macrobiotics was about everything, was a combination of everything, and gathering all, that it was different than Hufflin's thoughts about long life. And I just want to acknowledge something Greg said 15 years ago, which he's probably said a few times before, but when he said it, it really popped a cork in me, and it was a great doorway into, well, of course. And it was I think in Portugal, at one of those teacher seminars years and years back, when the senior teachers were there and we all had a chance to kind of give our little piece about life and emotion and reality and macrobiotics and exercise and whatever it was that we were all pretending to know something about. And Greg, you spoke a little bit about your own experience in the Concord Institute, and then you said infinity really doesn't give a damn what you think. Right?
Yeah, I remember.
Right. And I thought, well, that's true. And so what I wanted to connect to then was this comment about embracing everything. So yes, we embrace everything, but we have the tendency to embrace everything in the finite world. So we have to kind of reach through the veil to also embrace everything in the infinite world, which happens to be a lot bigger than the finite world, right? So I think what I get from Greg's sharing is sort of popping into that space of something beyond this small game we play in this life, which is in religious traditions called eternal life or infinity. That's part of macrobiotics too, but not one that's easily embraced or normally gotten into because we think of it as beginning and end.
Yeah, thank you, Bill, for bringing that color.
Hi, this is Michelle. I just want to make a comment. Thank you for this great forum and everything I'm absorbing today from all the great speakers. I did want to say that I studied macrobiotics with Denny Waxman and Oliver Calmetto and Warren Kramer. And what I noticed is that, and then doing further research myself, that I did macrobiotic diet. I got coaching from Denny, and he also was my counselor. So he did tell me to do things which were life-changing for me, and my health increased remarkably, and with Warren Kramer and Oliver as well. But I noticed that Oliver got me down the path of Chinese medicine, and incorporating that more into probably all of macrobiotics is Chinese medicine oriented anyway, but it is with the 5 transformations. But what I noticed on doing further research is that how do I diagnose my dampness inside or my dryness inside? So there's a tongue diagnosis, there's a pulse diagnosis, there's a facial diagnosis. So, and then going to an acupuncturist and having them look at me objectively and saying, yes, you're way too dry right now. And if I don't do these things, then that's going to lead me down the road to even bigger problems that maybe macrobiotics can't straighten out, because macrobiotics can only help you to a certain extent. Once you go beyond that limit, then you get into complications. Now, getting back to Denny Waxman, I think the fact that he was so big on his ideas that he didn't look at the small things, and I think he waited too long, and that was which led him to his demise. Only because I got notifications he's sick, and within a month he had passed. So that's my thought. Maybe more incorporating more of the tongue diagnosis and all these other things that acupuncturists do into our understanding would help us with our life, increase our life a little longer, and then know, okay, this isn't changing, I have to go to a doctor. So I don't know, that's food for thought. And thank you for all the food for thought that you've given my brain for today.
Michelle, that was just wonderful. This is Mike. That was just wonderful. You're looking terrific, right?
But you are not in the picture.
Well, I have to you don't see my tongue, Mike, but anyway.
Don't show your tongue.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Michelle, I would say that the majority of senior teacher, longtime macrobiotic teacher counselors who were peers of Denny and Ed and others certainly knew a lot about tongue diagnosis and about pulse diagnosis and about dampness and dryness and Chinese medicine and enormous numbers of other ways of diagnosis. They were not ignored, but all of us have a little bit of knowledge about a lot of stuff. And some people have very specific knowledge about things which happen to be more appropriate for a particular condition. But as Greg said, and we know, we do make stuff mean stuff. So, someone could just as easily come on this call and explain that Denny died because his Jupiter was square Saturn. And, or I don't know anything about astrology, what that means, but because someone studied his chart very carefully.
Nine-star key.
Yeah, we happen to be only 2 months apart. So Denny as a 6 metal and I as a 6. I mean, we can play the 9-star key piece. We can play a lot of the diagnostic pieces that we can bring in as overlays to look. But I just wanted to say that you seem to segregate macrobiotic practice from Chinese medicine or from tongue diagnosis or from use of herbs or acupuncture. My shelf up behind me, which has books on all those subjects, which I would always immerse myself in, might present itself in any number of situations. Even when I do a feng shui consultation on someone's beautiful home, and I walk into the kitchen and I smell bacon, and the woman has asked me to, figure out how to resolve their marital troubles. I'm not going to look for a place to hang a crystal. It's something else going on there that I might bring into play that has to do with their diet or their lifestyle, not feng shui. And in a similar way, a macrobiotic condition might present itself that I might look at a feng shui situation or a tongue diagnosis or an herb that I know or a Bach flower remedy or many other things that are the bigger piece of macrobiotics that many people have included in their study, and most counselors include to some or greater extent in their macrobiotic practice and consultation. I don't think Denny was limited at all. I spoke to him often about feng shui and about 9-star key. We didn't speak tongue diagnosis, but Michael Rossoff certainly does, for example.
Yeah, I know. And you can only know you can only present, I think what you made a good point, though. It's incremental steps, and then maybe you climb higher. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so, yeah, makes sense.
So if I may add my 2 cents worth of Nori. Yeah, I never understood what macrobiotics meant. And I can't say truthfully that I do know anything, what it means now. Like in 1988, I helped my parents put together one of their tours to Japan. And you know, I've been involved with wheels and everything. So I know all the fine details of putting a tour together. So anyway, so I went along on the tour as well. And wherever we went, people would introduce themselves and say, "Oh, I've been macrobiotic for so many years, 2 years, or I've only been macrobiotic for 6 months, so I've been macrobiotic." And when it came time for me, my response to that was always, I don't know what macrobiotics is. I'm still figuring that out. And I was being truthful about that. And going through life, eventually what was revealed to me is that avoiding death is the same as avoiding life, because death and life, I now see as the same thing. They're not different movements. It's one movement. And the other insights, as I mentioned in my presentation earlier, is that time itself is created through language in thinking. It's not a set thing like a clock. We create the clock time, which is great because that's what we're here to do. We're here to play. And so we create time, location, space. And so like we couldn't all be here together. There wasn't a way of measuring that. So the measurement of time is an agreement that we've all made societally, but it's not set. It's not an actuality. In the same way, countries are not an actuality. Borders of countries are just an agreement. So we don't recognize the time as an agreement. And we don't recognize that our identity is also just an agreement. And so when the form that we're identifying with dies, we don't pass on because we're just an aspect, an identity in the same way country borders are is a human fiction or that we play with or etc. And everything we put, the identity is everything that is known, our memories, everything. And we're so much more than what's known. There's, like Greg says, well, we don't know what we don't know. And that's as much of what our true essence is, as everything we do know. Everything we do know is such a small aspect of our true nature, and the beauty is to be comfortable in the unknown, because really that's where creativity, creation is occurring, is in the complete unknown. And likewise, it's, life and death is really occurring in the unknown. I don't know what anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Nori. Yeah.
Thank you.
Deconstructing these models of reality that we've been born into, time, ego identity, space and time are even probably illusions themselves. So that when we begin to see that we're an illusion, at least our idea of ourselves is an illusion, that then we take a giant step forward. I want to bring a few names in. For, when I'm working with people in certain programs in London, we say their name. When we announce their name, I invite people to think that their spirit, wherever they are, whether they're embodied or not embodied, their spirit shows up when you announce their name. And so when I say Denny Waxman, Murray Snyder, Ed Esco, Warren Kramer, Adalbert Nielsen, Chico Varatojo, then with their spirits, embodied or not, appear in the space. And if anybody else that you want to invite into that space, you're certainly welcome to do that.
Sheldon Rice.
Sheldon Rice, Michio Kushi, Aveline Kushi, Lily Kushi,
Patrick McCarty.
Bill Chen.
Yeah.
Hazel
Di-
Doe.
Diana Foley.
Rafi Dobin.
Rob Allenson, Bill Painter,
Mhm. Ken Burns.
Ken Burns,
Susan Brown.
Bill
Friend-
Tufte.
Herman Ihara, we've already brought him into the space. Cornelia Ihara.
I'd like to go back to your idea that, or Norio's idea that these are all thoughts that we made up. And I mean, I think it's good to have beliefs. I really think it's very important that we do. But we don't know if these spirits can hear us, or we don't know what the afterlife really is. And I'd be very curious if anybody has experience of near death and come back. That would be a hint of what might be waiting for us.
I think that might be that person's experience. It doesn't mean it's a universal. It could be.
That's a good point. Yes, that's true.
Michaud wrote in my favorite book of him is Holistic Health through Macrobiotics. And he writes that the clearer our condition is, the more we know what truth is. That it's when we're clouded with delusion, then we have all of these made up fantasies or might doubt altogether. And when our condition, the clearer that we can become, the more it's like when I listen to Norio, and I don't ask Norio, how do you know this? Because for Norio, it's clear, it's true, it is. So for me, that's the answer about how do we know what is truth or what's going on? Either we know or we don't. Either we know there's more than this life or we don't. It's nothing. Pascal, the philosopher, tried to prove the existence of God, and he coined a phrase which was leap of, what was it? The leap of belief or something. I can't remember the phrase right now.
Leap of faith.
Leap
Yeah.
of faith. Thank you.
Greg shared a poem, and I get to go meet my dog sitter in 2 minutes. So I just wanted to refer people also to one other great poet in this world of make-believe. And of course, that's Rumi, who turns out to be the most popular poet of all in America. Strange because he's a Muslim and still so popular among Christians and Jews. But my favorite poem of his, I keep thinking about when I'm with someone who's dying, and it refers very much to their death and how they die, as well as to people's life in how they live. And the poem is called Like This. So I'll let you Google it to hear and read Rumi's poem called Like This. But when people die, everybody that I've been with dies a little bit different. And it's almost as if when you ask them how they're going to die, they could speak and say, I'm going to die like this. And that's how people live also. And one stanza from Rumi's Like This poem is, the soul sometimes leaves the body, then returns. And when someone doesn't believe that, just walk back into my house like this.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go see my dog sitter. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks,
Thank
Bill.
you, Kanat. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Bill.
Bill.
Bye. Thanks, Noria.
Right.
Another popular Muslim poet is Khalil Gibran,
Gibran,
who
yeah.
also, yeah.
Yeah, many of us, he's one of the first poet many of us read. You know, we were weaning ourselves off of drugs and so forth. Anyone welcome to chime in? Norio?
Yeah, I want to address belief. What my interpretation of belief is that it's an attachment to an idea, and as in all attachments, it supports the game piece that we play in this game, but it's temporary and it only exists in this temporary game. So we were talking about creation, like the other analogy I use for this game piece is Tweety Bird. You know, like, so when Tweety Bird said, I thought, Booty Cat, we know that Tweety Bird is not actually seeing anything and speaking, yet, you know, we play that Tweety Bird is speaking and being chased by Sylvester or whatever. So in the same way, Tweety Bird obviously can't create anything because Tweety Bird itself is a creation, you know, a cartoon created by our cartoonist. Everything we identify with can't create anything either, any more than Tweety Bird can create anything. So creation is happening, obviously, creation is happening, but it's not who we think we are that has any creative capacity. Everything we think we are is a creation. But like Tweety Bird does not create anything. Creation occurs in relationship. There's a form here named Norio, there's a form there named Greg, Ginat, Bill, etc. And in the space of creation, life in world is being created. So when we're born, there's already humanity is already languaging a particular reality. So when we're born and we begin to speak, we then continue to reinforce that reality. So in the same way, the language and conceptualizing is an aspect of what we as humans do. That's the way we play. But that aspect of the human brain does not become activated till we begin to speak as a toddler. That's when it first starts to come online. And what brings that online is in relationship with others, with our family peers. So that's where the creation is continually occurring. It's not I, Tweety Bird, that's creating anything. I is is just an aspect of what's being spoken and created. When we die, when the form appears to die, the physical form, the I, Tweety Bird, also dies with that form. And yet our true nature never dies. Our true core nature is timeless. It's spaceless. And so when it's recognized that the Tweety bird eye is just an image, an agreement, a temporary image that we're using to play this game of being human, and not what our true essence is, then death, well, one, death is not an issue. Fear dissolves, but also the unknown is no longer an issue. The unknown becomes a place becomes a resting place. And that's what death is, unknown.
The poets call that place home.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, everything we know is, and we think that's real and we're attached to, gives us a sense that there's something missing, because it's only a small fragment of arising out of the unknown. Thank
In
you.
Hebrew, which is an amazing language, there are two words. One is creation ex nihilo,
From
and
nothing.
it's the same from nothing, and it's the same word, root word for the word health. And then the other word is creation, like I created a beautiful picture or something, whatever. So it's a different word altogether. No connection. Yeah.
A lot of people out
Yeah.
there may want to jump in.
Just a last share for me. It just, the whole day has been terrific. And just so you kind of know where I'm at in my takeaway, because I think that theme has been throughout the day, in human beings, I think trying to manage uncertainty, which I think the dial got turned up with the pandemic, but I think that's always something that's been present in living is that capability of dealing with the unknown and with uncertainty and with change and with people dying, whatever it is. I think that quest is very human. But I also get, and from the people that led discussions, that all of you are living your purpose, which is very, sort of role modeling to me, is that you do know you're committed to delivering on why you're on the planet right now, and that you do it and you bring it to these forums. And the issue of, in quotes, sort of traditional macrobiotics that Jeanette alluded to or talked about is how do I build a real clean vehicle so that the energy that I was purposed for gets to go through me, like, and engage in life and with people and whatever it is that I'm here to contribute, and that I know what I'm here to contribute. Yeah. But anyway, fabulous to think together with you, and clarity and commitment to my purpose. Yeah. Thank you.
Just inquiring whether any of you on the line have made any modifications on the macrobiotic diet, or any things that you have done personally that you could share. Thank you.
Let me just say something, if you don't mind, about macrobiotic diet. First of all, it's hard to get this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Macrobiotics is not a diet. Just see if you can let that in just for a second. It is not a diet. it's an invitation to a certain path in life. It's not anything. It's a way. It's a way of life. Now, diet, because we've been so unconscious in what we've been eating throughout our life, suddenly Macrobiotics shined a light on this very unconscious area and said, wake up. What you're putting in your mouth has a great deal to do with who you're being and the quality of your existence. And here are some tools, some guidelines, some tools called yin and yang or order of the universe. Here's some tools or ways of looking at reality, distinctions that enable you to see what you couldn't see before. And when you can see what you couldn't see before because you've got these magical glasses on, then you can make choices that you couldn't make before. But to reduce macrobiotics to merely a diet is a misrepresentation at heart of what this is. It is not a diet. And in fact, from what my take on it, macrobiotics includes all food. And you should, if you're a true macrobiotic, you will develop a love for all food, except where it gets non-food, so refined, so processed. But open up the whole spectrum of foods. We understand cereal grains in the center and vegetables and seasonal vegetables and legumes. And we understand the center of the spectrum, but also there's a periphery to it as well. Enjoy the whole spectrum, learn how to prioritize your eating, but enjoy yourself, enjoy the world of food. Enjoy, have an understanding of cooking may end up being more important than what you're choosing to eat. Because of the magic of cooking, the energy that's created, the alchemy that's created in cooking may be more important. So to think just because you're eating 50% grain, that may be completely irrelevant. How is that prepared? And first of all, we don't even have a history of rice eating in our country. It's taken many of us many years for our bodies to accept brown rice as a nutrient, because it wasn't part of, my ancestors come from Finland and Scotland. They don't have rice fields there. So, it takes time, but I wanted to deconstruct the idea that macrobiotics is a diet. It's not a diet. It's a way, a Tao, pathway, a Michi. It's a road. It's a path. You can take it. Many of us are on that path, aware of it or not aware of it. And that path takes us right here to this chat. And that path was made available to us by Micho and Osawa, Ihara, many others. And that path was made available to them by earlier folks. So there's a lineage to what we're doing as well to take into account. So Macrobiotics simply gives us some tools, some ways of, some distinctions, some ways of seeing what we couldn't see before, and then organizing our life around these distinctions. So that's my take. I don't know if that helps. Is it Carol? I don't know if that helps, Carol. And the bottom line is enjoy yourself.
Yes, the human form is, we're here to play. We're here to play. And yeah, if I could reiterate some of what Greg said, growing up, listening to George Osawa, and the focus on food was, naturally we ate a particular way, but I didn't know that growing up. To me, that was the only thing I knew. So I wasn't eating macrobiotic food. I was just appreciating the food that I was eating. And he didn't talk much about food. It was only until 1985 that George Osawa and my dad
65.
said, thank you, Gina. 1965, that when I was 10 years old, that when we were living in Cambridge, that hey, cancers, there's a lot of attention on cancer. Hey, let's use macrobiotics as a way to, let's use cancer as a way to introduce people to macrobiotics. And in so doing, more attention was put on the diet, quote, but not, it wasn't originally a specific diet. It was just, like Greg was saying, it was just shining the light on the food we were eating. Because back when I was back at that age, people thought food made no difference in their health. Literally, people thought food had no bearing on our health. So that's where the idea that it's a diet originated, from that focus on using cancer as a vehicle to introduce people to macrobiotics. And myself, as I said earlier, to me, it was never a set thing. It was always like I never got to a point where I said I'm macrobiotic or I'm not, like I didn't, it was an open question for me always. And recently, as you know, I was diagnosed with Merkel cell carcinoma. So, oh, this is interesting, the interpretation of life, I don't see it as good or bad or right or wrong. But it's what's up. And more recently, January 17th, earlier this year, 2023, I saw another doctor and to get, quote, a second opinion. And he suggested a keto diet, no grains, no carbs. And so I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And, all my favorite foods are, like mochi, udon, soba, all grain. And I asked him, he was a Chinese doctor, so you mean no udon, no mochi? And he said, "No, right." He said, just, and I asked him, how long? And he said, 2 years. And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I am now eating a, quote, keto diet, which includes red meat. And like today, I had for breakfast scrambled eggs with bacon, things that I haven't eaten before. I mean, my son makes me steak, salad. And prior to this, I probably had steak 3 times in my life, back in my earlier teenage years when I was experimenting with discovering what other people were eating. And the remarkable thing is that within the first week, my energy level doubled. My pain level came way down. And I had my leg was really swollen and numb. And that all shrank back to normal size within the first week of shifting to this keto diet. I don't have a conclusion. I'm not suggesting that's what anyone does. I'm not advocating a keto diet. I'm just saying that I'm still figuring it out and playing. I mean, the main thing is that I'm playing and enjoying it. So to me, it's not as Greg, I just wanted to reiterate what Greg is saying, not about the diet. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Naveel.
About the diet, Ginat was wonderful in introducing different teachers who came to Israel. And each time someone did something entirely different and shocked us. And Norio, you just really shocked me. And so that really is interesting how things change. And I'd be very curious how that continues for you. I'd really like to know. 3 months is what left.
I too am very curious. And something my mother told me when I was 5 years old. trust your feelings. Don't trust the intellect, trust your feelings. And by that, she didn't mean emotion. She meant more intuition. And so that's all I'm going by is, I listen to, in other words, when I say the doctor recommended or suggested that I do this, I don't say that, like I often say, the doctor told me to do this. No, the doctor didn't tell me anything. The doctor told me about the keto diet. He suggested it. And as he's speaking of it, I'm listening, I'm feeling what's going through the body as I'm listening to the words. And my body was open and said yes, not in words, but it was like, okay, yeah, so 2 years, well, okay. And I said, okay, I can do 2 years. January.
And I consulted with the same
2025.
doctor. I consulted with him too. And when he told me this stuff, I was like, I'm not doing that. It was like, no way, goodbye. So, and I told Michael Rossoff about his recommendations, and Michael was more open than I was. He was like, oh, that's really interesting.
I think, Nora, you may want to speak to Lenny Jacobs. I think he tried that out for a while, just an experiment, personal experiment. So if you catch up with him, you'll get maybe some insight into it as well.
Yes. Yeah, I have been in touch with Lenny. He lives in Asheville.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Just
been
also-
fun. I mean, he and Michael are very supportive of everything the way my life is unfolding for me. So it's wonderful to have these friends from so many years.
Yeah, we have to think our way forward, dream our way forward. One thing I want to do is certainly break up this fixation around food. This way that our whole awareness in the macrobiotics is oriented around food, hoping that adjustments of food or food intake is going to take us to the promised land, whatever that may be in your own head, better health, more wisdom. We do have a fixation in macrobiotics, unfortunately, around food. And there are other things we can pay that we're not paying attention to because there's so much of a fixation on food that we're not paying attention to other disciplines and practices that may enhance our well-being or give us more of a deeper understanding on what it is to be a human being, what we're doing here, where we're going, and so forth. So if we can break up that fixation, I think we're opening a new chapter on macrobiotics and maybe putting it in its proper context, and getting it out of this healing modality that it seems to be stuck in for such a long time.
My comment about that, because I have a healthcare background, is what has always interested me in terms of, the if you will, the fixation on what we put in our mouths is to me, it's very comparative to the medical paradigm, which is there's a cause of a disease. And so what's the magic bullet? And I think that I look at what Michaud and George did as a marketing strategy to introduce the whole of macrobiotics more to people by focusing on its results with one particular complex array of disease or cells that start doing interesting things in our bodies. Anyway, yeah.
The irony, of course, is that so many longtime macrobiotic people have or had cancer. Yeah. Maybe, Greg, you're an exception to the rule.
I'm good for right now, but who knows tomorrow? You don't know. All I do know, I'm a mortal being, going to die like everybody else, and so yeah, we've lost a lot of friends. I think we got stuck. If you look at the development of macrobiotics over time, we became in more of an ideological movement, something of the mind, an idea. And we got lost touch with the practical access to it as a possibility. We wanted to be right. In other words, we wanted to be right. Getting the yin yang of food right is the new truth in life. If the world can get that new truth in life, then we'll create a biological transformation. We'll live happily ever after, one peaceful world, and so forth. That was the premise of about getting the food right. And yeah, that was an ideology. And so when you're eating from an ideology, you're not eating food, you're eating ideas. When you eat from an ideology, you're eating ideas or a prescription, or you're eating from a prescription or a diet. You're eating an idea. A diet is nothing but an idea. You're eating an idea. You're not eating food. You're only eating food when you start listening to your body or cultivate the ability to listen to what your body requires. When you can listen to what your body requires, then you can choose food appropriately. And if you've left the whole food spectrum available, as Nori has in this case, if you leave the whole food spectrum available, your body will tell you what you're supposed to be eating.
Yes.
And that may change over time as well. So you have to be flexible and fluid as well. You got to continue to listen to your body. And
I think that macrobiotics allows us to connect with that intuition that maybe we couldn't before. Because I know that my own journey through diet is now not so much through diet, but is bringing that way of balancing through the philosophy that I've learned, balancing reality with the non-local, as well as what I do in my life is an energy that can balance in other ways with non-doing. So keeping my life in balance has become more important even than the food.
yeah, and actually, when you're eating quote macrobiotically, if you're got other disciplines and practices there, that multidisciplinary approach is enhanced. Macrobiotic practices enhance the power available to you. The biological changes are enhanced because of your other practice. There's a synergy that takes place with these other practices.
Yes, the synergy. Yes.
Whereas just food alone, it's a low dimension. It's one dimensional.
Yes.
You add some other practices, it becomes multidimensional, and it becomes a synergistic effect takes place.
Yes.
And this is where, when you're stuck in an ideology, you don't go looking at other practices and disciplines because you're just a believer. And in a movement whose motto is "Don't believe," we all turned out to be believers.
Right.
But we were trained not to believe, to question, to be critical in our thinking.
But I like the playing, because Norio, thank you for the playing, because that's actually how my husband goes through life, is playing. So I've always been sort of like the one who takes care of everything while he's playing. But so now we're sort of like exchanging and making balance in that way. And but yes, it's all one beautiful piece with endless, limitless parts.
Yeah, we're having to navigate now into new territory. We have to stand on the shoulders of those. We have to really start dreaming and navigating on new territory and learning how to navigate in new terrain. You have to really cultivate your inner navigator for doing that.
Yeah, when some of the things that Giorgio said was, like, I feel like what we're talking about is bringing it back to where Giorgio was coming from when he was initially sharing his insights, which he didn't actually call macrobiotics many years ago. It was a borrowed word, borrowed name. And like one of the things he said is, when you're healthy, you can eat anything. You don't limit yourself. to what you're eating. The other thing he said is, let's see, just one other thing. I didn't write it down. I had written down a list of things that he had said, and he didn't consider any difference between if you die from a disease or if you die from a car accident. He didn't make a distinction. Like one, it's like cause and effect, the way we think, oh, we can avoid this. So to him, it was the same thing. Whether we died in a war and battle, whether we died from car accident or however, or we died from an illness, cancer, or whatever. So that's I found, and hearing him speak of that, and then and my mother also living from that place.
Yes.
I never, it's like I said, I never held on to it like this is true. It just made me question reality all the time. I was always questioning, well, what else, what does it really mean, etc. Oh, and here I continue to do so. And really, it comes down to recognizing that the me identity is only a linguistic distinction and not an actuality. I'm very comfortable in not knowing. And so the idea of death, not knowing, I'm very, very at home with that. Because in actuality, we don't recognize that. We really don't know anything. Yeah. Everything we know is the past. It's information from the past and memory. But that's not what we are. we're truly unknown, and we can truly create anything from not knowing, from the unknown. That's the beauty. That's the magic of really being human.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are a few people who haven't spoken. Gabo, Akos, Grace, anyone who would like to say something, you don't have to. It's an opportunity.
I would like to say thank you. This has been very enlightening. I know that a lot of us got freed up today, freed from some ways of thinking. And detached from some thoughts that ideologies. We've been able to detach because of this day, this information, this session. So, thanks.
That's a great word to use. Detach. Absolutely.
Can you share any of your insights? Anything that you?
Well, my name is Siti Brannon. I live in Savannah, Georgia, USA. I found Macrobiotics about 30 years ago in Orlando, Florida. I went to a health food store. They needed a cook. And they asked me, do you cook macrobiotics? And I said, yes, because I needed a job and I didn't know what macrobiotics was. So I grabbed all the books on the shelf and I started reading, and I became a macrobiotic cook and I started practicing. I didn't get a chance to study macrobiotics. I jumped in and found out that it was a way that we could bring about healing for a lot of people. And I'm still learning. I'm always learning about macrobiotics.
And anything special about today?
Yeah.
Pardon?
Yes, beautiful.
Any special insights, particularly today?
Well, today, I heard Greg say something about the energy body. And then it was in November, my mom passed away, and I was there looking at her, and I felt this energy as she was slipping away. And I'm trying to figure out what happened to that energy. When was the beginning of that energy? When did it attach, or was it attached to her? It's just that is still I'm learning about the spirit, the soul, the energy, and what happens when we leave here. What capacities do we still have? Or it was beautiful the way we call the names of different members, family members, or loved ones that had gone on, and how they it appeared to me that yes, she was present with me when I called her name today. This whole day has been very healing for me. Thanks. Beautiful.
One more name I omitted with, this is for Norio and myself, is a guy named Steve Earle, who I was very close to. We were in Japan together. He brought me to Tokyo for a very special event that changed my life forever. So to Steve, eternally grateful. Steve Earle.
What was the event? If you want to share.
This was called the Forum, but it was a Japanese forum. It wasn't the US forum. There was a Japanese woman named Nami Kominami did a 2-weekend event in Tokyo, 1985, with a new technology for looking at consciousness and being. And this went on for two weekends and 2 evenings. And on the second weekend, I was no longer I. To go back to the poet.
Yes, Steve Earle.
very-
I met Steve Earle in Japan back in April 1973, and he's the author of this book. I don't know if you can see, Awake at the Wheel.
Yeah, which is a book about Norio's life as a long-haul truck driver.
Yeah.
And there's Norio Kushi's Highway Adventures and the Unmasking of the Phantom Self. So Steve Earle wrote this book. And yeah, I had the pleasure. Pleasure isn't the right word, but I was grateful that I got to be there with his family when he died in Richmond.
We knew him and Kemi very well. We used to go visit them in Japan, have dinner together. So they were very close friends of our family.
Yeah. So thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
Mentioning Steve.
Yeah.
I would like to add also somebody's name and the memory. That's Shizuko Yamamoto, with whom I studied quite a lot. She wasn't in Quintal, but she was on the island of Tenerife twice. And that's where I could join and learn shiatsu. And I was so impressed by her vitality. I think she was then almost 80 or something. It impressed me a lot. And then I got to be, she gave a head massage, shiatsu massage for the head. And I was the one whose head she used. And I thought, this is impossible. How hard can be one head? You know, she had such energy, such strength. Afterwards, I felt, I don't know how, very, very, very much awake. The impression that she made on me was that for her, macrobiotics, the food and the laws of macrobiotics that made her life. I think she had also been very ill, and she cured herself with macrobiotics. And this is why she put it together with the shiatsu practice. And for me, it was really right. The partner she had, an American, I think McCarthy with the last name. Do you remember? He died
He was a
Also
West,
quite-
Coast- I didn't know him.
in the middle
Oh,
of life.
Patrick.
Maybe Mike, you might know him, Mike.
Patrick McCarty.
Ah, yeah.
Patrick
Patrick,
McCarty.
exactly, Patrick. He was there too, and yeah. That's how I think I like to add these two names, not
Yeah, Shizuko Yamamoto, yes, we know she was an elder. She was part of the macrobiotic family, if we are a family, which I think we kind of are informally. She was certainly part of that family.
Also Lucci, could mention her, Veranda.
Who's this?
Lucci, if you know her.
No.
Yeah, Luci, the mother of
Patricio.
yeah, Patricia, who lives in Japan.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's been real. I appreciate all of us. I appreciate our time, our wisdom, our friendship, our health.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
Gannat, thank you very much for the opportunity. And for everyone, show it. Thanks for showing up and participating.
Good.
Best wishes
Yeah,
to
and-
everybody.
Thank you.
Happy
Yeah,
trails,
friendship
as we
that-
say. Yeah,
Yes.
Norio, great seeing you as always. Be well, my friend.
You too,
Thank
Greg.
you for the
And-
poems too.
Yes.
Yep, the poems too. Yeah, poetry, there's a future in poetry. Thank you.
All there is love.
Oh, there's.
Your love.
Goodbye.
love.
Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. See you
Thank
next
you.
time.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.